What if the very things you've been avoiding, fear, pain, uncertainty, are the key to a deeper understanding of life? Could discomfort, rather than being something to flee from, actually be the path to growth, resilience, and wisdom? In this journey, we've explored the hidden dynamics of control, the pitfalls of comfort, and the paradoxes of human emotion. You'll discover how our need for certainty can trap us, and why embracing discomfort can make us stronger. This is about stepping into life's complexities with open eyes and learning to navigate its messiness rather than just survive it. Through philosophical reflections and psychological insights, we'll uncover 8 important philosophical questions. The dark truth. The road isn't easy, but it's real, and it's worth your time. Chapter 1. The subtle weave of reality. Reality, as we perceive it, often feels tangible and fixed. Yet beneath the surface of what we see, touch, or hear lies a far more fluid realm. This is the realm of subtle energies, a web of forces that connect every living thing. These forces are neither mystical nor magical, but are simply unseen. You might think of it as the wind that moves through the trees, something felt but never captured by the eyes. Our thoughts, emotions, and intentions are intertwined with this field, shaping and influencing it in ways we rarely understand. One of the most overlooked truths is that the mind is both an observer and a creator of reality. While science has long explored the limits of the brain, what we often fail to consider is how our inner mental states interact with the world beyond. The mind doesn't simply sit passively within the skull. It radiates intention, sending out vibrations that echo in this energy field. This isn't just philosophical speculation. In 1995, a study conducted by psychologist Dr. John Bargh showed how subconscious thoughts could influence behavior, decisions, and view of surroundings, even when individuals believed they were acting independently. The idea that our thoughts shape our surroundings isn't new, but it's often misunderstood. It's easy to assume that thinking positively means nothing bad will ever happen, but that's a simplification. The truth is, our thoughts, particularly those deeply ingrained in our subconscious, direct the flow of our lives, subtly yet powerfully. They set the stage for how we interpret events, people, and opportunities. The energy field around us shifts based on these deep inner narratives. But here's where things get interesting. Control over this field doesn't require some grand transformation or esoteric rituals. What it asks of us is awareness of the thoughts we cultivate, the emotions we nurture, and the beliefs we hold about the world. When we become aware of our mental habits, we can begin to influence the energy field intentionally, aligning it with the outcomes we seek. The key isn't about forcing positivity. Instead, it's about aligning with authenticity. When we bring ourselves into harmony with our own truth, acknowledging our fears, doubts, and desires, we engage the energy field in a way that fosters real transformation. Through mindfulness and presence, we begin to see how the outer world is a reflection of the inner, subtle weave of reality. Chapter 2. The Mirror of Inner Perception. As we continue to explore the subtle forces shaping our reality, we come face to face with one of the most powerful influences, the mind's perception. Perception isn't just a passive process. It is active, constantly sculpting and reshaping the world we experience. When you look at something, you aren't merely observing it. You are filtering it through layers of belief, bias, and past experiences. This becomes your version of reality, and in many ways, it is as unique as a fingerprint. Psychologists have long studied how perception shapes behavior and even identity. In 1951, a classic study by Jerome Bruner and Cecile Goodman demonstrated that children from lower-income backgrounds perceived coins as larger than children from wealthier backgrounds. It highlighted how our needs and desires could alter our very perception of the physical world. This phenomenon, known as motivated perception, suggests that what we see isn't always an accurate reflection of what's out there, but rather a reflection of what we expect or want to see. So, if perception is so malleable, what does that mean for our experience of reality? It means that the world you navigate is a mirror, reflecting back your internal landscape. When you look at a situation with doubt, fear, or prejudice, you shape it through those lenses, often creating self-fulfilling prophecies. But the opposite is also true. Approaching life with curiosity, openness, and awareness has the potential to reveal a reality full of possibilities. This mirroring effect is where the mind's power over the energy field becomes undeniable. It's not about magic or manifesting material things on a whim. Rather, it's about shifting your perception so that you open yourself to new possibilities that already exist but remain invisible until your mental frame changes. Philosophically, this raises a key question: how much of what we see is truly objective? Most ancient traditions and modern psychology suggest that very little is. Reality is not something we simply bump into. It's something we co-create. The more consciously aware we become of how our perceptions are influencing our external world, the more we can adjust and refine the way we engage with life. In practical terms, cultivating self-awareness becomes critical. When you become mindful of your biases and judgments, you gain the ability to break free from automatic patterns of thinking. You stop reacting to the world and start engaging with it intentionally. The inner mirror becomes clearer, and through it, you see not just what the world is, but what it could be. Thus, perception, rather than being fixed or limited by circumstances, is fluid and constantly reshaping our lived experience. If we begin to see it as a tool rather than a limitation, we empower ourselves to shift the reality we inhabit from one of limitations to one of potential. Chapter 3. The Silent Conversation of Energy. The phenomena around us vibrate and embody certain unseen and often unnoticed power that underlies the processes occurring in our environment. This energy is not an idea. It is the very essence of what people feel and think and how they communicate with one another. However, most of those who observe such occurrence on a daily basis possess scarce knowledge on how exactly this exchanging of energy occurs or on how it impacts their life. Common American scientists and researchers like Albert Einstein, Max Planck, they all agreed that energy is the basis of all things. They discovered what formed the foundation to know that the universe is in fact an ocean of energy. But what do we do with this personally? But how does this abstract scientific principle play itself out in the real life that we lead? First of all, the energy that we send out and the energy that we take in is part and parcel of our emotional and mental selves. This idea is not far from the concept of emotional contagion, which was researched by Elaine Hatfield in the beginning of the 90s. Emotional contagion means that we are not islands of our individual emotions, but our emotions infect others, and we are infected by theirs, usually involuntarily. You've likely experienced this. When a meeting is full of conflicts, you feel washed out, or when you talk to a friend and feel happy. These exchanges are not simply entailing literary or behavioral interactions. They are charged transactions, impacting moods and resultant behaviors. Energy given out and energy taken dictate the manner in which people treat us, while the energy taken determines how we perceive the same people. This results to there being a constant and almost invisible interaction between ourselves and the world around us, each getting acquainted, each contact in the sense of discussing, confiding, of being together, has its positive or negative contribution to the energy economy. The key to mastering this subtle dance lies in awareness. Most people move through life without realizing the impact they have on their surroundings, or how their surroundings impact them. This lack of awareness leads to a kind of energetic chaos, where moods, thoughts, and reactions are shaped by forces beyond our control. We find ourselves reacting to situations instead of creating them. However, by becoming more attuned to this energetic exchange, we gain a powerful tool: mindfulness, simply paying attention to the flow of energy between ourselves and others, can drastically shift how we experience the world. When we are aware of the energy we bring into a space, we can consciously decide whether to radiate positivity, calm, or tension. Similarly, when we notice the energy coming toward us, we can choose how to respond, rather than being passively influenced. Philosophically, this awareness of energy touches on the deeper question of connection. If everything is energy, and energy is constantly shared and exchanged, where do we begin, and where does the world end? Are we truly separate from others, or are we all part of a greater, interconnected whole? In this way, understanding energy isn't just about controlling our moods or managing stress. It's about realizing that we are participants in a much larger system, one that is shaped by the invisible but ever-present flow of energy between all things. The more conscious we become of this, the more we can shape our lives in alignment with our true intentions, rather than being buffeted by unseen forces. Chapter 4. Tapping to subconscious influence. Our conscious mind is often seen as the pilot of our actions, directing our decisions, thoughts, and interactions. But what if the real power lay beneath the surface? The subconscious mind, often unnoticed and underestimated, is where much of our potential resides. It's like the vast part of the iceberg below the waterline, silent yet powerful. This layer of the mind holds our deepest memories, patterns, and instincts, influencing us in ways we rarely recognize. The idea of the subconscious shaping our reality is not new. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, brought attention to it over a century ago. Freud believed that the subconscious mind holds thoughts and desires that we are not aware of, but which still shape our actions. His theory of repressed emotions driving behavior, though controversial, emphasized how much happens within us without our conscious knowledge. In modern psychology, the subconscious is often linked to habits and automatic responses. For instance, when you learn to ride a bike or drive a car, at first, you need to consciously think about every move. But after enough repetition, it becomes second nature, muscle memory. The same process happens with our thoughts and emotions. What we repeatedly tell ourselves becomes our default mental setting. If we constantly feed our mind with negative thoughts or self-doubt, it reinforces those beliefs in our subconscious, guiding our behavior and perception of the world without us even realizing it. Human mind is like water. It takes shape of its container. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Marcus Aurelius said, "Mind absorbs the color of the thoughts." This invisible influence of the subconscious can either uplift us or hold us back. Here lies the importance of becoming aware of this hidden part of the mind and consciously reprogramming it. If you believe you're destined to fail, the subconscious will find ways to confirm that belief. But with consistent effort, we can plant seeds of positivity, confidence, and self-love. Over time, this rewiring shifts our automatic responses, creating a new baseline for success and well-being. There's a fascinating link between the subconscious and emotional regulation. Studies have shown that much of how we emotionally react is shaped by subconscious conditioning from childhood. Understanding this link can empower us to break free from old emotional patterns that no longer serve us. In learning to tap into the subconscious, we open a door to greater mastery over our mental and emotional landscape. It's a quiet, persistent force, one that once understood, can be harnessed to reshape not just how we think, but how we live. Chapter 5. The Comfort Zone, a silent prison of the mind. The comfort zone, a space where we feel safe and in control, is often considered a refuge from life's uncertainties. It's that familiar place where our routines and habits feel secure, free from risk. But while this mental space might offer a sense of ease, it also creates invisible walls around our growth. It's a double-edged sword, a sanctuary that can turn into a prison if we remain inside too long. The comfort zone, psychologically speaking, is governed by our brain's natural desire for stability. The mind seeks patterns and predictability, preferring environments that limit stress and anxiety. This is a survival mechanism. We're wired to avoid the unknown because, to our primal instincts, unpredictability equates to danger. But here's where the trap lies. In avoiding discomfort, we also avoid change. The growth we seek in life, whether in relationships, career, or personal development, rarely happens in the comfort zone. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, who introduced the concept of the hierarchy of needs, argued that self-actualization, the realization of our fullest potential, is only possible when we step beyond what's familiar. Maslow believed that personal growth is driven by challenging ourselves and pushing beyond our perceived limits. It's this space, just beyond the boundaries of comfort, where real transformation begins. There's an interesting psychological phenomenon called the Yerkes-Dodson law, which explains the relationship between stress and performance. According to this theory, moderate levels of stress can actually improve performance and foster growth. However, too much stress can lead to burnout, and too little leaves us stagnant. The comfort zone, by keeping stress levels too low, often prevents us from reaching that optimal level of challenge that leads to progress. Remaining in the comfort zone can also create a feedback loop of fear and avoidance. The more we avoid discomfort, the more fearful we become of the unknown. This avoidance can trigger what's known as status quo bias, where we irrationally prefer things to stay the same, even if change might offer better outcomes. This bias keeps us stuck, convincing us that the known, however limiting, is safer than the unfamiliar. But stepping out of this mental prison doesn't require drastic leaps. Small steps. Taking up a new hobby, speaking up in a meeting, trying something you've always hesitated to do. Gradually expand your comfort zone. Each small victory reconditions your mind, teaching it that discomfort doesn't always lead to harm, but often to growth. In understanding the comfort zone's allure, we gain the power to push its boundaries. Growth isn't about abandoning comfort forever, but about dancing with discomfort in a way that fuels progress, rather than hinders it. The more we step outside, the more we realize that the real risk is staying inside too long. Chapter 6. The Illusion of Control. Letting go of what we never had. My fellow Stoics, it's our golden rule, the evergreen advice, the dichotomy of control. The idea of control is something we cling to tightly, often without realizing how fragile it is. We like to believe that we have the power to shape the outcomes of our lives, our careers, relationships, and futures. But the truth is, much of what we think we control is simply an illusion. While this can feel unsettling, accepting it opens the door to a deeper peace and understanding. At its core, the illusion of control stems from our innate desire for certainty. We are wired to seek predictability in an unpredictable world. This need for control provides us with a sense of security, but it's often based on a misconception of reality. While we can influence situations, we cannot dictate them. Life is too complex, full of variables we can't account for, and it's this complexity that disrupts our attempts at control. There's an interesting psychological phenomenon known as the illusion of control bias. This bias occurs when people overestimate their ability to control events, particularly in situations governed by chance. For instance, Think of someone rolling dice. They might believe that throwing the dice a certain way will affect the outcome, even though the result is random. We do this in life too, convincing ourselves that if we work hard enough, say the right things, or make the perfect choices, we'll be able to shape outcomes. But often, events unfold in ways we can't predict, leaving us frustrated and disappointed. Why do we cling to this illusion so tightly? One reason is fear. Fear of chaos, of losing control, and of the unknown. The more we try to grasp control, the more we resist the natural flow of life. Yet, in reality, the more we let go, the less anxious we feel. A psychological study conducted by Rush and Miller, 2009, explored how letting go of unattainable goals leads to better emotional well-being. The study found that people who accepted that some outcomes were beyond their control experienced less stress and greater life satisfaction. Letting go doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It's not about surrendering to fate and abandoning personal responsibility. Instead, it's about recognizing the limits of control and focusing on what you can influence: your actions, reactions, and mindset. You can't control every outcome, but you can control how you respond to it. This shift in focus reduces anxiety and frees us from the constant pressure to micromanage life. The illusion of control can also blind us to the beauty of uncertainty. While the unknown can be intimidating, it also holds the potential for unexpected growth and opportunities. When we release the need for control, we make space for life to surprise us in ways we couldn't have imagined. There's a kind of peace in embracing uncertainty and realizing that we don't have to have all the answers or always be in control. In the end, true strength lies not in mastering life, but in navigating its unpredictability with grace. Letting go isn't about giving up. It's about trusting that, even without control, we can still find our way. Chapter 7. The Paradox of Happiness. Why pursuing it makes it elusive. Happiness is something we all strive for, a universal goal embedded deep in the human experience. Yet, the more we chase it, the more elusive it seems to become. This paradox, where the pursuit of happiness often leads to its opposite, raises fundamental questions about how we approach happiness and why it seems to slip through our fingers when we try too hard to hold on to it. One of the most interesting aspects of this paradox is how the act of pursuing happiness can create pressure and expectations that ultimately undermine it. When happiness becomes an explicit goal, it turns into something we measure and judge, which inevitably leads to dissatisfaction. We start asking ourselves, am I happy enough? Or why am I not as happy as I should be? These questions plant seeds of doubt, pulling us away from the very state of mind we're trying to achieve. Psychological studies support this idea. Research by Mouse et al., 2011, found that people who place a high value on happiness tend to feel lonelier and more disappointed when they fail to achieve it. The study suggests that when happiness is made a priority, people can become so fixated on it that they overlook the small moments of joy and contentment in everyday life. This hyper-focus creates a kind of tunnel vision, blinding us to the natural, fleeting happiness that arises spontaneously. This phenomenon also taps into the concept of hedonic adaptation, which refers to our tendency to return to a baseline level of happiness despite changes in life circumstances. Whether we achieve something wonderful or face a hardship, over time, we adjust emotionally and return to our typical level of contentment. The chase for happiness, then, often leads to temporary highs, followed by an inevitable return to the norm. This is why material gains, professional achievements, or even personal milestones, while rewarding, rarely bring lasting happiness. So why does pursuing happiness directly often backfire? One reason is that happiness is not a static destination, but a byproduct of other pursuits. When we engage in meaningful activities, connect with others, or simply savor the present moment, happiness often arises naturally. But when we make it the ultimate goal, we unintentionally strip away its organic quality, turning it into something artificial, something to be earned or achieved. But there is also a philosophical side in this question. It is on this understanding that happiness, in its profoundest degree, cannot be managed or assured. As with the concept of love, it needs to be let to grow on its own, not when it is prodded and pushed. What Epictetus, the famous Stoic philosopher, tried to explain is that happiness actually does not depend with what happens to us, but on how we handle it. The first secret, which people fail to practice most of the time, is the ability to let go of trying to force happiness and instead embrace the virtues of authenticity in living and embracing life and all that comes with it. This is not to say that happiness isn't something people should aim for. We should strive to lead purposeful lives and let joy follow in its wake on its own. It is useful to remember the notion of flow that has been developed by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist. A flow is a level of engagement at which the person is completely absorbed in the given activity and where there seems to be no time. Happiness, on the other hand, is not something that we consider when experiencing flow. And yet, afterwards, we may feel quite content. I guess that's a moment where we are fully involved in something which is other than ourselves, and that's when happiness surprised. Happiness is the byproduct rather than the main aim. It's discovered rather in mundane activity, in embracing the transience of existence, the happiness of recognizing, and in the contentment of dwelling in harmony with the soul. In essence, when we let go of the pursuit of happiness, we leave the door open to it coming in. Chapter 8. The Fear of Suffering. Why we avoid pain at all costs. Suffering is inevitable in life, yet we spend much of our time trying to avoid it. Pain, whether physical or emotional, is something we instinctively shy away from, and modern life has provided countless distractions and comforts to help us evade it. But here lies the paradox. The more we try to escape suffering, the more it tends to catch up with us in unexpected ways. In our attempts to protect ourselves from discomfort, we often miss the deeper understanding and growth that comes from facing pain directly. Psychologically, humans are wired to avoid suffering for a simple evolutionary reason: survival. Pain signals that something is wrong, so we react by avoiding whatever caused it. However, in today's world, not all pain is a sign of physical danger. Much of the suffering we encounter is emotional, rooted in fear, loss, or the uncertainties of life. Yet, our response remains the same. We retreat, numb ourselves, or distract from it. This avoidance of emotional pain can lead to what psychologists call experiential avoidance. It's the tendency to avoid thoughts, feelings, or experiences that we perceive as unpleasant. While this strategy may offer temporary relief, over time, it compounds our suffering. A study by Hayes, Strozahl, and Wilson, 1999, on Acceptance and Commitment Therapy Act, revealed that trying to suppress negative emotions often intensifies them. The more we fight against pain, the more it persists, because we give it power by constantly trying to push it away. This brings us to the concept of psychological flexibility, the ability to accept and experience emotions without letting them dominate our actions. It's about embracing discomfort as part of the human condition, rather than running from it. Psychological flexibility allows us to experience suffering without becoming overwhelmed by it, to observe our pain without letting it control us. When we stop trying to avoid pain at all costs, we become more resilient, more capable of facing life's inevitable hardships. Avoiding suffering also deprives us of the lessons it holds. Throughout history, philosophers and spiritual traditions have pointed to the value of suffering as a catalyst for growth. What does not kill me makes me stronger, highlighting the idea that through adversity, we become more robust, more capable of handling future challenges. In a more nuanced way, Buddhist philosophy teaches that suffering is a fundamental part of life, but through mindful awareness, we can transform it into a source of wisdom and compassion. This perspective suggests that pain, when faced with acceptance, can lead to greater insight and a deeper connection to others. Desire to avoid suffering can also amount to a sort of emotional apathy. While seeking to avoid pain, we can become reinforced from ever experiencing pleasure, affection, and satisfaction. Basically, it is the experience of investing in a wall to shield one from the storm, only to discover that the same wall denies you access to the sunshine. The positive is set off by the negative, and that means we cannot reach for joy, touch, and purpose without holding back from suffering. According to the Stoic schools of thought, pain is not really pain but a perspective that people put on an occurrence. Even the great philosopher Epictetus once said, "It is not what happens to you that matters, but that you take it for what it is." His teachings dovetail with the psychology theory of reappraisal, which recasting a distressing event in a manner that will render it less hurtful. For example, when on a particular endeavor one fail, it is possible, through the right perception, see the failure as a success pointer rather than a failure pointer. Suffering does not refer to looking for suffering or enjoying suffering. No, it is about understanding that suffering is also one of the leitmotifs which are always present in our life. Thus, rather than avoiding it, we can confront it with the strength and inquisitiveness we need. By doing that, we expose ourselves to change and development, or, in other words, to growth. If practiced with awareness, suffering can reveal to us our wounds and resources, expand our compassion for self and others, and contribute to our wholeness. In the end, the fear of suffering could be more agonizing than the suffering of fear. If we can acknowledge that the presence of pain is an acceptable part of life, then we remove from it its ability to control us. Not only do we become freer, simply because we are no longer subjected to the illusion that suffering can be avoided, but are submitted to learning how to live with it. Now, congratulations. You've reached the end. I suppose you liked this video. Now share your experiences with us. We are all ears. We will read each comment and pin the most inspiring one. Peace.